Hello, I'm Rebecca Simone, a partner in the healthcare group at Nixon Peabody based out of New York. And today I'm joined by two professionals who approach the intersection of healthcare and AI regulatory compliance from different vantage points. Clinical practices have begun using AI tools and often through vendor relationships directly. These tools promise to make day-to-day operations efficient, more effective, both on the clinical and administrative side of things. Management services organizations, or MSOs, have begun to integrate AI tools in their service offerings to affiliated practices. And when the management companies offer these affiliated professional entities, or PCs, when we're talking about the PC MSO relationship, when they start offering these services for a fee, determining how that fee methodology should work raises some very thorny regulatory questions. Jerry Chang is a managing director and partner at Stout and is based out of Atlanta. He specializes in healthcare evaluations for transactions and regulatory compliance purposes, including fair market value assessments of cutting-edge PC MSO structures. Michelle Masucci is one of my partners in the healthcare group at Nixon Peabody, also based out of New York. She focuses on healthcare transactions, regulatory compliance, particularly in digital health, AI, and PC MSO structures. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Looking forward to it.
So let's get right into it. Michelle, when an MSO provides AI-enabled services to a PC, what are the key regulatory concerns that could come into play?
Well, there are three issues that jump right out. One is fraud and abuse, federal and state level. The second is state fee splitting laws. And the third is corporate practice of medicine doctrines. And they all kind of interrelate to the other.
And why is the fee between the PC and the MSO so important?
Well, there are real business objectives, right? Between the PC and the MSO, we want the MSO to be compensated for the services that it provides. But we don't want, from a legal point of view, three things to happen. We don't want, under the fraud and abuse laws, for this fee to look like a disguised payment for referrals. Then under the state fee splitting laws, we don't want the MSO to be sharing in the profits of the PC. And last, under corporate practice of medicine, we don't want the MSO to be having extra control over the clinical or unpermitted control over the clinical activities. So if you have a fee that's too high, it looks like the MSO is invading the space of the clinician. And if you have a fee that's too high, it looks like it's sharing in the profits. So we worry about these three things from a regulatory point of view.
And Jerry, what makes valuing AI technology or AI-enabled services different from traditional MSO services?
Well, think about the traditional types of services that a management service organization would offer. These are things like billing, scheduling, credentialing, HR, IT, finance. And these types of services are largely labor and process driven. And because of that, the value of these traditional management services are primarily based on headcount and market compensation levels that are more easily benchmarked. Therefore, they're more conducive to utilizing a cost-based or market-based approach. As far as AI-enabled services, now we're entering the realm of intangible assets or even intellectual property. And this gets a little bit more fuzzier, and they don't really fit neatly into the traditional valuation approaches and methodologies because of the nature of that asset and service. And so they're not as conducive to using, let's say, a cost and or a market-based approach.
So, Jerry, when you're developing a fair market value opinion for an AI-related fee, what factors tend to matter the most?
There's a host of different factors, and I can't get into all the factors today, but I can say that one of the major factors is what I would consider the blurring of traditional boundaries. And when I say blurring of traditional boundaries, I mean in different aspects. So, for instance, AI-enabled services, they could be affecting not only the operational side of a practice, but also the clinical side. I've got an example now with a behavioral health company that they're offering AI-enabled MSO services, but they're also touting the ability for this AI to help with certain clinical aspects of the business. And we all know that the MSO really can't provide any type of clinical services because of the corporate practice of medicine. Another area that you see blurring is, whether the AI-enabled technology or service is tied to a specific management service, or is it really more of a overall infrastructure for the management function of the MSO? There's also a question of, does the AI technology reduce costs that make the performance of the management services more efficient? Or does the AI-enabled technology actually deliver an innovative service capability that adds a value-added a service? And then there's the question of, interesting topic is, if a practice is providing data to the MSO, and the MSO is able to use that data to make their AI better or improve the proprietary know-how, has the practice in effect delivered value back to the MSO, and how does that interact with the current fee that the practice is paying the MSO? And then I think third, there's this concept called functional obsolescence. You don't hear that term too often, but in the realm of assets, you have to ask yourself, is the AI technology that existed as of the valuation date still in existence and still functional as it was from the valuation date to today? So let's say you go 6 months down the road, and we all know AI is changing so fast. Well, the AI technology may have enhanced capabilities 6 months later or even a year later that didn't exist as of the valuation date. So that can affect the shelf life of a valuation. So these are just some of the factors that come to mind right off the top of my head.
Thanks, Jerry. Particularly the functional obsolescence. That's so interesting and probably not something that comes up in many of your other healthcare valuations. So kind of switching gears, let's talk about per patient or per use structures. These types of, per click, per use structures are analyzed in different contexts for healthcare regulatory compliance. But in this instance, sometimes they're a way for the MSO to capture the cost of AI licensing fees and pass it through to the PC. So Michelle, from a regulatory standpoint, do usage-based fees create audit exposure? And what should practices be doing proactively when AI-assisted coding leads to an increase in billing?
Well, I think you're raising a really, really important point. What everybody expects from AI is that there's going to be more effective medical time. There's going to be a more effective use of the doctor's time. So by offloading a lot of the non-clinical activities. But the concern is that the MSO has an interest in more profitability and basically billing more. So I think that what's going to happen is that the claims are going to be highly there's going to be a high exposure to the integrity of the claims that are being dropped. And I think the answer there is that there has to be a balance of automation and oversight. So while you want to reduce costs by having the automation, you have to put in some time and effort and resources on the oversight. So I think that you need to consistently do audits, review those audits, give the people revenue cycle training, compliance training, make sure that the bills that you're submitting are accurate, which goes back to the audit. At the end of the day, it's still medical services being provided, and you have to justify the medical service through the standard and traditional coding objectives and guidance.
That's right. And at the end of the day, the provider is the one responsible, right? Regardless of what AI tool they use to help them bill.
Right.
So, Jerry, what are some common mistakes you see when parties try to set these fees without kind of formal valuation support? And what are some of your potential valuation approaches and methods?
Okay, I'll answer the first part of the question first. So I think some of the common mistakes that I see, number one is just really insufficient front-end work to really understand how the AI-enabled technology is utilized in the services being provided by the MSO. because you have to really understand, for instance, is that AI tied to a certain service component like billing or credentialing or maybe even legal? Or is it really more of that overall infrastructure, that technological infrastructure that actually helps the entire management function? And another area that you have to think about as well is whether the MSO is actually licensing in, let's say, generic off-the-shelf AI tools, and maybe repackaging it as some type of proprietary tool or AI-driven solution, when it's really just a generic off-the-shelf solution that you can buy, that anyone can buy. And so that could be a risk of the practice overpaying if the MSO is framing that as this proprietary know-how and charging for this special sauce, so to speak. So really understanding upfront how that technology is being utilized in the MSO service offering. As far as the second part of the question, we are in sort of a new fair market value frontier. And so you definitely have to apply tried and true valuation principles and methodologies to the valuation of AI-enabled technology in the management service offering. Some of the methods that I've seen in this new frontier include things like a cost savings method, where the thought is that the AI technology will increase efficiency and reduce the costs of providing certain management services. You may even see an increased profit margin on top of the reduced costs to account for some value-added service that wasn't in existence before the AI technology was being used. Another methodology would be looking at the market for, let's say, proxy data points. And then another potential method would be, that was mentioned earlier, was maybe looking at a licensing agreement type structure where we treat the AI enablement as IT infrastructure, and we decouple the traditional management services, the more the labor process driven, with the technology component, and arrange for a licensing agreement between the PC and the MSO to account for the value of providing that AI technology, like you would see with maybe like eClinicalWorks or some other type of service that helps a practice manage the operations. I think the challenge there, though, is as we know with licensing agreements and the royalty payments associated with the licensing agreements, they're often tied to let's say a percentage of revenue or some type of metric that is driven by maybe volume or value, and we know that that's a problematic thing in healthcare. So maybe you structure a licensing agreement as maybe an upfront lump sum payment, licensing payment. Or maybe you structure some type of subscription model, like a software as a service model, where you pay an ongoing subscription for the use of the AI technology that's being provided as part of the overall MSO services.
Yeah, and with some of those software service agreements, we do see a fee per user, right? Like we were talking about before, per user or per click fee. So clearly there are significant healthcare regulatory concerns, complex valuation considerations. So a question for both of you is, at what point should you two be talking to each other? What point should legal and valuation teams be communicating? Michelle, I'll turn to you first.
Thanks, Rebecca. I think as soon as possible. I think that MSOs have a habit of trying to back into numbers, and I think with the AI technology, that's a real danger, because you want to make sure that these methodologies are compliant so that your asset is structured with integrity. We want to make sure that the business can stand on its own from a regulatory point of view, and we expect that there'll be enforcement in this area, particularly on the physicians' licenses. We're seeing that a little bit, and we want to make sure that we could withstand any claims that the artificial intelligence technologies anyway practicing medicine or causing overbilling.
Jerry, any thoughts there on what the team should be talking to each other, or what happens when those conversations happen too late?
Yeah, not surprisingly, I'm going to echo what Michelle said. As early as possible, I think the sooner that the valuation provider can speak to the attorneys, it reduces the risk of a pricing structure that might run afoul of fee splitting laws and also different states have different corporate practice of medicine laws, and so just being able to understand exactly the structure and what's going to be provided. Definitely earlier the better is my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing more heightened scrutiny of restrictions of corporate practice of medicine and dentistry, particularly right now in California. In addition to the regulatory scrutiny risk, the MSO is more valuable to potential investors the more compliant it is. Because you'll end up with lawyers like Michelle and I that are hired by an investor doing regulatory diligence on an MSO. And if there's issues with the fees or no good valuations to back it up, we'll note that as operating risks to potential investors. So final question for both Michelle and Jerry. What's something you wish more clients understood about this process before they start negotiating?
Well, this might sound self-serving. It's not meant to sound self-serving. I think there are times when you can have the lawyer come in a little bit later, after the deal is more cooked, as I say. But I think that the upfront legal spend and putting these structures together is really important. Again, because it'll have foundational integrity.
I think that there's always this sense of urgency. It seems like whenever I encounter these MSO PC structures, both parties really want to get things moving and try to get that fair market valuation opinion as soon as possible so they can get it, the arrangement signed and sealed and delivered. I always like to use the phrase "go slow to go fast," because the more work you put in upfront, as I mentioned earlier, and really understanding how that AI technology is interacting with the services that are being provided by the MSO, it's just going to prevent surprises on the back end and potential delays as far as the analysis. And so my advice is, put in the front end work and really focus on understanding the structure, understanding how AI is being used.
Jerry, Michelle, thank you both so much for your insights. Clearly, there is a lot more we could dig into here. Maybe we'll have a part two. To everyone out there watching, thank you so much for taking the time. If you have any follow-up or questions, please feel free to reach out directly to Jerry, Michelle, or myself. Thank you.